The streets of the alien settlement were alive with noise, full of merchants calling out prices, strange machines rattling, and crowds pushing through narrow alleys. Yet in the middle of that busy life sat a small figure, forgotten by all. She was an alien girl, no more than 13 in human years. Her body was thin, her ribs showing through her pale skin. Her eyes were too big for her face, glowing faintly in the dim light. She had not eaten in 2 days, and her stomach twisted with pain. Every sound of food, every smell of roasted meat from the stalls made her tremble. She reached out her hand, her voice shaking. "Please, food, just a little." But no one listened. The first merchant brushed her away with his tail. The second kicked dust in her face. One woman spat at her and said, "Your kind should starve. You are nothing but a curse." The girl pulled her knees to her chest, hiding her face. The hunger did not fade. It grew stronger. The settlement was cruel to the weak, especially to her kind. Her people were considered worthless, unwanted, and dirty. No one wanted to be near her. They feared even her shadow would bring shame. And so, the crowd walked by as if she was invisible. Her small stomach growled loudly. A group of children pointed at her and laughed, mocking the sound. She covered her belly with her arms, ashamed of the noise. In her mind, a single thought repeated again and again. "I don't want to die like this." Then, in the middle of the crowd, someone stopped. It was not another alien. It was not a guard. It was a human. He stood taller than most around him, with broad shoulders and calm, sharp eyes. His clothes were plain, the marks of travel on them. But he was different. The girl felt it at once. The human looked down at her. He did not laugh. He did not spit. He did not turn away. Instead, he bent down, slowly, as if she was something fragile. In his hand he held a small piece of bread, rough and hard, but real food. The girl froze. Her heart pounded. Was this a trick? She had been mocked before, given stones instead of food. She stared at the bread, unable to move. "Take it," the human said softly. His voice was deep, steady, not cruel, not mocking. The girl's hands trembled as she reached for it. For one long second she thought he might pull it back and laugh like the others. But he didn't. The bread stayed in his hand, waiting for her. Her fingers touched it, warm and real. She clutched it close, and for the first time in days, she bit into food. The taste filled her mouth, rough and dry. But to her, it was sweeter than anything in the world. She chewed slowly, afraid it might vanish if she ate too fast. The crowd noticed. A few aliens stopped to watch. Some sneered. One merchant shouted, "Human, why waste food on trash like her?" Laughter rose from the side, voices filled with hate. But the human did not flinch. His eyes stayed fixed on the girl. She looked up at him with wide, wet eyes. There was confusion, fear, but also a spark of something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The human did not speak again. He only gave her a nod, as if to say she mattered. For the first time in her life, someone saw her not as trash, not as a curse, but as a living being. And deep in her chest, past the hunger and the pain, a question formed, shaking her heart. Why? Why is a human helping me? The answer had not come yet, but the moment had already changed everything. The girl sat frozen on the ground, holding the rough piece of bread close to her chest. Around her, the crowd's laughter grew louder, pointing at the strange sight of a human giving food to an outcast. Some called him foolish, others whispered that he must be mad. Still, the human did not move away. He stood calmly, his face unreadable. The girl ate in tiny bites, afraid that if she finished too fast, the gift would be gone. Every chew filled her empty stomach, and every swallow pushed away the fear of death a little more. She wanted to thank him, but the words were stuck in her throat. No one had ever been kind to her. She had forgotten how to speak with kindness. The human crouched lower, meeting her eyes. His gaze was steady, gentle but strong. "Eat slowly," he said, his voice quiet. "There is more." From the small bag on his side, he pulled another piece, softer than the first. He broke it in half and placed it in front of her. The girl's heart raced. Was this real? Twice in the same day, someone was giving her food. She stared at the bread, her hand shaking as she reached for it. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. At last, she whispered one word. "Why?" The human tilted his head slightly as if the question surprised him. "Because you are hungry," he answered simply. The answer felt strange to her. Too simple, too honest. Her people were used to complex lies, cruel jokes, and empty promises. Not this, not truth. The crowd did not like the scene. A traitor hissed, "Humans, stop this nonsense. She is cursed. Your kindness will bring ruin." Another shouted, "Feed her today and she will follow you forever. Is that what you want?" Their voices were sharp, but the human ignored them. The girl looked around, seeing the anger in every eye. Fear rose in her chest. If he listened to them, he would leave her. Everyone left her. But the human reached out, not to hurt, but to shield her. His broad frame blocked the stairs. His shadow covered her trembling body. "Eat," he said again. His voice was firm now, carrying a weight that silenced even the loudest mocker, and she obeyed, slowly, carefully. She chewed, her eyes never leaving him. She feared that if she blinked, he would vanish like a dream. For a moment, the settlement felt different. The noise of the market faded. All she could hear was her own breath and the sound of chewing. All she could see was the human's calm face. When the bread was gone, she licked her fingers, ashamed but desperate not to waste even a crumb. The human did not laugh. He did not judge. He reached into his bag once more and pulled out a flask of water, clear and cool. He held it out to her. Her throat was dry, cracked from thirst. She took it carefully, drinking small sips. The water slid down like liquid fire, waking every part of her starving body. Her eyes filled with tears, not from pain, but from something she could not name. "Better?" the human asked. She nodded quickly, too shy to speak. In that nod was something stronger than words, a tiny spark of trust, but not everyone was silent. A group of guards walked closer, their armor shining in the light. Their leader sneered, "Human, you should know the law. Outcasts are to starve. Helping them is a crime." The crowd murmured in agreement. Some smiled, eager to see him punished. The girl froze, fear stabbing her chest. Would he leave now? Would he throw her away to save himself? Her hands gripped the empty flask tight, her heart pounding. But the human stood tall, his voice calm. "A crime," he asked. "To feed a hungry child." His words cut through the air, heavy and sharp. The guards shifted, uncertain. The crowd grew restless. The girl's eyes widened. Her heart whispered a question she dared not speak aloud. Will he truly stay, even if it costs him everything? The answer had not come yet. But in that moment she knew this small offering was not just food. It was the beginning of something far greater. The human's words hung in the air like a challenge. A crime, to feed a hungry child. The crowd went silent for a moment, but silence in the settlement never lasted. Soon whispers turned to shouts, and shouts turned to anger. "He thinks he is better than us," one merchant hissed. "Humans don't belong here. They act as if their hearts are pure," another sneered. "Throw him out! Throw the cursed girl out with him!" someone cried. The guards stepped forward, their boots heavy against the stone ground. The girl trembled and tried to shrink behind the human's legs. Her fingers clutched the hem of his cloak. She knew what always happened when the crowd turned cruel. First came the shouting, then came the pushing, and finally the beating. One of the guards raised his spear, pointing it at the human. "This is your last warning. Leave the outcast. Walk away, or you will share her fate." His voice was sharp, full of authority. The crowd cheered, wanting to see the human bend, but the human did not move. His eyes stayed calm, steady like a mountain in a storm. He looked at the guard, then at the girl. His voice was quiet but strong. "I don't walk away." The crowd erupted, some with laughter, others with fury. "Stubborn fool," a traitor spat. "He will regret this." The guards tightened their circle, ready to drag him down. The girl's breath came in short gasps. She whispered under her breath, "Please, don't fight. They will kill you." But he heard her and shook his head slowly. One guard stepped closer, reaching for the girl. The human's hand shot out, gripping the guard's wrist with iron strength. The guard yelped in surprise. The crowd gasped. No one touched the guards. No one dared. But the human had. The leader snarled, "You dare strike an officer." His voice carried across the square. The human answered calmly, "I dare protect a child." Those words cut like a blade. Even sharper than any weapon, the girl's eyes widened, her heart pounding. He was not only feeding her, he was claiming her safety. The guards pulled back, whispering among themselves. They were not cowards, but they had never faced a human who stood without fear. Their kind was known for strength, for stubbornness, for fighting even against the impossible. The leader hesitated, just for a breath, and in that pause the crowd roared louder. "Punish him! Make him pay! Break the girl! Break them both!" The girl felt dizzy, the noise crashing over her, her stomach twisted, not from hunger this time, but from fear. She wanted to run, but her legs would not move. Then she looked up at the human, and for the first time in her short, painful life, she believed someone might stay. The leader spat on the ground. "You think one man can fight a whole settlement?" His words were bitter, meant to crush, but the human's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. "I don't need to fight a settlement. I only need to do what is right." The crowd hated those words. Righteousness was dangerous. Kindness was rebellion. The guards stepped back, not because they were afraid, but because they were waiting for orders. And the order came quickly from a voice above. From the balcony of a nearby hall, a council elder appeared, his cloak heavy with symbols of power. His voice was old, sharp, and commanding. "Enough!" The crowd fell into silence at once. Every head bowed, even the guards. The elder's eyes locked on the human, then on the trembling girl. His lips curled in disgust. "Humans never learn. They come here with their strange hearts and their foolish mercy. This one will be taught a lesson." The girl felt her body grow cold. She whispered again, "He should leave me. He must save himself." But the human stayed firm. His hand rested on her shoulder, steady, unshaken. The elder Rai set a hand and declared, "Bring them both to the square tomorrow. Let all see what becomes of those who defy the law." The crowd roared with approval, their voices full of hate. The girl buried her face in her hands, whispering through tears, "Why? Why won't he let me go?" And in the human silence was an answer she could not yet understand. He had no plan to let her go, no matter the cost. The sun had dropped below the edge of the sky, and the alien settlement turned cold and dark. Lights flickered weakly on the stone walls, and distant echoes of laughter came from taverns and market tents. But in a quiet back alley, far from the noise and eyes, a small shadow walked beside a tall one. The girl's steps were slow, almost dragging. Her bare feet scraped the ground. Her thin hands gripped the edge of the human's coat. She didn't know where he was taking her, but she didn't ask. He didn't say much. His eyes stayed forward, focused, strong. But every few steps, he looked down at her to make sure she was still close. She didn't speak either, not because she didn't want to, but because words felt too small for what she felt inside. After many turns and narrow paths, the human stopped in front of an old building. Its metal door creaked as he opened it. Inside was a single room, small and plain, a low bed, a wooden table, a single lamp on the wall. "This is where I stay," he said. His voice was calm. "It's not much, but it's warm. You'll sleep here tonight." The girl hesitated. Her eyes moved slowly across the room. She had never been inside a place like this. Not clean, not safe. Her last shelter was a broken crate near a waste pipe. She stepped in, quiet as a shadow, and stood near the wall. The human walked to the table and placed his bag down. He pulled out a small folded cloth and handed it to her. "For your feet," he said. "They're bleeding." She looked at her toes, surprised by the blood. The pain had become normal, something she didn't even notice anymore. Slowly, she sat down and wrapped her feet. Her hands trembled, not from pain, but from something new. He walked to a pot in the corner and lit the small heating coil beneath it. A simple soup began to warm and the smell filled the room. Her stomach growled again, louder this time. He smiled a little. "You'll eat soon." She looked up at him. "Why?" she asked again, softer this time. "Why are you helping me?" The human turned slightly, stirring the pot with a wooden spoon. His back was strong, his shoulders tired but steady. "Because I was hungry once," he said, "and someone helped me." Her eyes widened. He too had once been like her, alone, starving. She didn't know humans could suffer the same way. He brought a small bowl of soup and placed it in front of her. She didn't rush. She waited, looking into his eyes, trying to find a trick. But there was none. She picked up the bowl carefully and drank slowly. It was hot, her tongue burned, but she didn't stop. The warmth traveled down her throat and into her belly. She had never tasted anything this good. He didn't speak as she ate. He just sat nearby, letting her feel safe. The silence between them was not empty. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid. After she finished, he stood up and pulled a blanket from his pack. He offered it to her. "You can sleep on the bed. I'll stay on the floor." She gasped, "No, you can't." But he shook his head. "You've been on the ground too long. Tonight you sleep like someone who matters." The blanket was soft, the bed firmer than anything she had known. She curled up slowly, unsure if this was real. The human sat against the wall, arms crossed, eyes half closed. She looked at him one last time, her voice a whisper. "Do I really matter to you?" His eyes opened just a little. He didn't smile, but he nodded once. "Yes." That one word wrapped around her like another blanket, warm and full of something she had never dared believe in: trust. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in her life, she fell asleep without fear. The next morning came with pale sunlight and cold wind blowing through the narrow streets. The girl opened her eyes slowly, blinking at the strange ceiling above her. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she felt the blanket around her and smelled something warm in the air. She turned her head. The human was still there, sitting by the door with his arms folded and eyes half closed. He wasn't asleep, just resting, like a silent guard watching over her. When he noticed she was awake, he stood up and nodded. "You slept well." She nodded back, unable to speak. Her throat was tight with something she didn't understand, something soft and heavy like emotion. They shared a quiet meal, just some leftover soup and dry bread. But to her, it felt like a king's feast. After cleaning up, the human picked up his bag. "We need supplies," he said. "Come with me, stay close." The girl followed, her steps cautious but more confident than before. As they moved through the streets, heads turned, whispers began again, some soft, others cruel. That human still has the outcast with him. He must be sick in the mind. Maybe she has some secret power, some spell. The girl heard it all. Her ears dropped, and her eyes stayed low. But the human kept walking, as if none of it mattered. When they reached the marketplace, the crowd parted. Not out of respect, but out of fear and disgust. They reached a vendor's stall. The human asked for dried fruit, grain, and water packs. The vendor hesitated, then glanced at the girl standing beside him. "I don't serve her kind," the vendor said, crossing his arms. "She's not asking," the human replied. "I'm buying." The vendor leaned closer and hissed, "You're bringing trouble here, human. You think this place will change just because you fed one stray?" Others nearby nodded. One old alien said, "That girl's people were thieves, rat. Is in the dark. You protect her now, but she'll turn on you like the rest." The girl's heart sank. She wanted to speak, to say she wasn't like that, but the words wouldn't come. The human stared at the vendor. "Then tell me," he said, "if kindness is wrong, what does that make all of you?" The crowd bristled, but no one answered. Another voice rose from behind the stall. It was a tall, alien woman dressed in robes. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes were sharp. "You're brave, human," she said, "but stupid bravery is still stupid. You walk a path that leads to fire." The human looked at her, calm as ever. "Then I'll walk through fire." The woman narrowed her eyes. "They are watching you now, the ones in power. This place does not forgive kindness shown to the broken." He turned away, finishing his purchase without another word. The girl hurried beside him. They left the market in silence, the weight of warning heavy on their backs. When they turned the corner into an empty side street, the girl finally whispered, "They hate me." The human stopped and knelt beside her. His hand rested gently on her shoulder. "Let them hate," he said. "I won't." Her chest tightened again, not from fear, but from something warmer. He didn't just feed her. He didn't just protect her. He stood with her even when the whole world turned against them. But deep down, they both felt it. Something was changing, and the wind in the market had carried more than words. It carried a warning, and somewhere beyond the stalls and stone walls, unseen eyes had begun to follow them. Night fell quickly in the settlement, turning the alleys into narrow rivers of shadow. The lamps along the walls flickered weakly, their glow unable to chase away the cold darkness that spread across the stone roads. The human and the girl returned to the small shelter, carrying a few supplies wrapped in cloth. They spoke little, but a quiet bond grew between them, stronger than before. She had begun to walk a little closer, not out of fear, but because being near him made her feel safe. The cruel voices of the market still echoed in her ears, but his silence had drowned them out. Inside the shelter, the human locked the door and checked the windows. Then he handed her a blanket and sat near the table, preparing another simple meal. The girl looked at him with quiet wonder. "You're not afraid," she said softly. "I am," he replied, his voice steady. "But I won't show it in front of you." That answer confused her, yet warmed her heart. No one had ever admitted fear and still stayed by her side. But safety in this place never lasted long. Outside, the sound of footsteps echoed in the alley, slow at first, then quicker, like something chasing itself. The human stood at once, silent and alert. He moved to the door, placing a hand on the handle. The girl held her breath. Her instincts screamed that something was wrong. Then came a knock, soft, then loud. He didn't open it, instead asking firmly, "Who is it?" A voice answered from the other side, deep and cruel. "Kind heart, open up. The law would like a word with you." The human stepped back, shaking his head. "That's not the voice of any law I know." The door slammed open, not with law, but violence. 3 aliens burst inside, tall and masked, carrying iron rods and stun sticks. Their eyes burned with hate. The girl screamed and tried to hide, but the human stepped between her and the intruders without a second thought. "You've made a mistake," one of them growled. "That girl should have starved. You fed her, sheltered her, made others question the rules." The human didn't answer. He reached into his coat and pulled out a short metal bar, his only weapon. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a fighter like him. The room exploded into chaos. The first attacker lunged with a rod, but the human ducked and struck low. The rod hit the wall, not his head. He rolled forward and slammed his knee into the alien's leg, sending him crashing down. The second came from the side, aiming for the girl. She shrieked, but the human twisted around and blocked the strike with his arm. The blow landed hard, pain flashed across his face, but he stood his ground. The third attacker stabbed with a shock stick, hitting the human in the side. Electricity surged through his body, but he didn't fall. With a roar, he spun and slammed the bar across the alien's chest. Blood hit the floor. One attacker crawled out, another limped, and the third ran into the night. The girl ran to him, her hands shaking as she reached for his side. "You're hurt," she cried. He dropped to one knee, breathing hard. "Just a burn," he said through gritted teeth. "I've had worse." She grabbed a cloth and dipped it in water, trying to clean the wound. "Why do this?" she asked. "Why fight for someone like me?" He looked at her, pain in his eyes, but also something brighter. Because someone has to. In that quiet, broken room with blood on the floor and fear still thick in the air, the girl realized something had changed forever. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was protection. This was choice. And now she wasn't just a starving girl in the street. She was someone worth fighting for. The room smelled of smoke, sweat, and blood. But to the girl, it smelled like something else. Bravery. The human sat by the wall, his back against the cold stone. His shirt was torn where the stun stick had hit him. The burn on his side had turned red and swollen, but he didn't complain. The girl sat beside him on the floor, carefully pressing a damp cloth against the wound. Her hands trembled, but she didn't stop. "You should rest," she whispered. "I will," he replied, his voice soft but tired. "After you do." She looked at him, confused. "Why do you care if I sleep? You're the one who's hurt." He didn't answer right away. His eyes stared at the small lamp above them, flickering in the corner like a weak star. "Because someone once cared when I was broken," he finally said. The cloth slipped from her fingers. She sat silently for a moment, thinking about those words. They felt heavy, full of pain, but also full of something warm. She took the cloth again, soaked it in cool water, and began to clean his wound more gently. "Does it hurt?" "Only when I breathe," he said with a small smile. She blinked and gave a shaky laugh, the sound surprising even herself. It had been so long since she laughed, she had almost forgotten how. The human looked at her, his smile fading slowly. "You're stronger than you think." She didn't believe that, not yet, but something in the way he said it made her want to try. Outside, the street was quiet again. The attackers had not returned, but now they knew. The girl understood that from now on, things would only get harder. She reached into a bag and pulled out a small piece of dry fruit he had bought earlier. She held it out to him. "You need food too." He took it with a nod and chewed slowly. His jaw moved stiffly, pain flickering across his face, but he didn't show weakness. As he ate, the girl reached forward, gently brushing her fingers across the edge of the wound. The skin was burned, a dark scar already forming. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You got hurt because of me." "No," he said firmly. "I got hurt because of them." She looked into his eyes, her own beginning to fill with tears. "But if I wasn't with you, they wouldn't have come." His voice lowered. "Then I would have let evil win." Those words struck her deep. She had always believed she was a burden, a problem to be hidden or thrown away. But this human had taken scars for her and still called her worth it. Her small hands reached for the edge of her thin tunic. She lifted her sleeve to reveal her own scars, long faded marks from beatings, starvation, and pain. He looked at them without flinching, not with pity, but with respect. "You've survived too," he said. "Scars don't mean weakness, they mean you lived." Tears rolled down her cheeks now, but she didn't hide them. For the first time, her pain wasn't something shameful. It was something he understood. The room grew quiet again, but not empty. Something new filled the space, something unspoken but powerful. The girl pulled the blanket up around his legs and sat closer, her small body leaning gently against his arm. He didn't push her away. She whispered, "You're my family now." The words made his chest tighten, not from the wound, but from something deeper. He didn't reply right away. Instead, he placed one large hand gently on her head, resting it there like a promise. And in that small room, with two broken souls sitting together, the bond between them became something stronger than fear, stronger than hunger, stronger than pain. Family. Rain began to fall the next morning, not hard but steady. The drops tapped softly on the metal roof of the human's shelter, making a rhythm that sounded like a distant warning. The girl sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the small window. Water streaked down the glass, and the streets outside looked even more empty than usual. The human stood near the door, checking his supplies. He moved slower now, the wound on his side making each motion tight and careful. Still, he didn't complain. "Stay here today," he said to her. "It's safer." She looked at him, nervous. "Where are you going?" "Just nearby," he replied. "We need medicine, and something better than soup. You need strength." "I'll come with you," she offered, standing up quickly. He shook his head. "Not today. You've already been seen too much. They're watching." The girl felt her chest tighten. "Who?" The human didn't answer right away. He picked up his coat and slid his arm into the sleeve slowly. "The ones in power. The ones who make the rules." She sat back down, biting her lip. The silence between them felt heavier than before. When the door closed behind him, she hugged the blanket tightly around her shoulders. The warmth inside the room couldn't stop the cold she felt in her heart. Out in the rain, the human moved carefully through the side streets, avoiding the main square, but even in hidden places, he felt it. Eyes on him, from windows, behind corners, through narrow cracks in stone walls. People watched. Some stared in anger, some in fear, a few in silence. He reached an old healer's shop, run by an alien elder who rarely spoke. The human placed a few coins on the table. "I need burn balm and clean bandages." The old alien nodded slowly, collecting the items. His eyes flicked toward the human's wound, then toward the rain behind him. "You should leave this place," the elder said quietly, "before the council decides your fate." "I can't," the human replied, "not without her." The elder's hands paused for a moment. Then he wrapped the supplies in cloth and handed them over. "Then protect her well," he whispered, "because the storm is coming." Back at the shelter, the girl waited, every sound outside making her flinch. She sat near the window, clutching a broken spoon like a weapon. Her ears perked at the slightest noise. Boots, voices, even the sound of a cart rolling by. When the human finally returned, soaked and tired, she rushed to the door. "You're back," she breathed, relief flooding her voice. He smiled weakly. "Always." She helped him sit, then opened the package. She cleaned his wound with soft hands, her fingers more careful than ever before. "They're going to do something, aren't they?" she asked, not looking at him. "The council." He nodded. "They don't like what we're doing." "But we're not doing anything wrong," she said, her voice shaking. "No," he replied. "But kindness threatens control. When one person cares, others begin to question, and those in power, they fear questions." She looked at him, her eyes wide. "What will they do to us?" "I don't know yet," he said, "but we won't be alone." That night, while they shared another small meal, the girl felt the air outside growing heavy. The rain had stopped, but the silence that followed was sharper than thunder. Somewhere out there plans were being made, whispers in the dark, eyes in the walls, judgment forming like clouds before lightning. But inside the small shelter, there was a human with scars and a girl with fire in her eyes. And no matter how heavy the storm would become, they were no longer alone. The council square had never been so full. Every step echoed across the stone ground as people gathered in silence. All around the high walls, aliens of every kind stood shoulder to shoulder, waiting, whispering, watching. The sky was gray above them, as if even the clouds were holding their breath. In the center of the square stood a raised platform, cold and wide. 2 guards stood on each side of it, armor shining, eyes blank. At the front stood the council elder in his long dark robes, a thin staff in one hand and judgment in the other. At last, 2 more figures were brought in, one tall and one small, the human and the girl. He walked calmly, despite the pain in his side, his coat torn, boots muddy, but his back straight like a warrior. The girl walked close behind him, her steps small, her hands gripping the edge of his coat again. Her eyes darted around, afraid of every stare, every hiss, every sharp whisper in the air. The elder raised his hand, and silence fell like a stone. "This human," he began, his voice sharp, "has broken the law of the settlement." He pointed his staff toward the girl. He gave food to an outcast. He gave her shelter. He defended her with violence. And worst of all, he dared to say she mattered. The crowd muttered, some with agreement, some with confusion, a few with shame. The elder turned back to the human. "You were warned. You chose defiance." The human stepped forward. His voice was quiet, but every word carried. "I chose compassion," he said. The elder's face twisted. "Compassion is not the law." "Then your law is broken," the human replied. A wave of gasps rolled through the crowd. The elder's eyes burned with fury. "You speak like you own this place." "I own nothing," the human said, "but I still have a voice, and I will use it." He turned slowly to face the crowd, raising his voice just enough to reach them all. "This girl was starving," he said, "and no one looked at her. She was treated like trash, like disease, but she is not trash. She is not a curse. She is a child." The girl stared at him, breath caught in her throat. "She laughed yesterday," he continued, "for the first time in years, not because she was saved, but because she was seen. She belongs to no one, but I choose her as family." A heavy silence followed. One by one, heads turned, not to the elder, but to the girl. Some looked away in guilt, some stared in anger, but a few, just a few, looked with something else, something close to understanding. The elder slammed his staff to the ground. "You dare call a cursed child family in front of this council?" "Yes," the human said, "because family is not blood. Family is who you protect, who you choose, and I choose her." The guards moved forward, ready to strike. The girl stepped in front of the human, arms spread. Her body shook, but her eyes held fire. "If you punish him, you punish me too." The elder faltered, just for a moment. The crowd began to murmur again, louder this time. From the edge of the platform, a voice called out, "They did nothing wrong." Another voice joined, "She's just a child." And then, a third, louder than the rest, "Is kindness a crime now?" The elder looked around, realizing control was slipping. The storm had come, yes, but not just for the human and the girl. It had come for the laws built on fear, and the first stone of that wall had cracked. The storm had passed, not the one in the sky, but the one inside hearts, inside laws, inside the old silence of the settlement. The council square was still full, but no longer loud with hate. The voices that once called for punishment now stood unsure. Some had gone quiet, some had turned away, and a few had stepped forward, not with weapons, but with questions. The human stood tall, his coat torn, his wound aching, but his heart steady. Beside him, the girl no longer trembled. Her small hand was wrapped in his, not out of fear, but choice. The elder had left without another word, his staff lowered, his eyes full of defeat. The guards did not stop them. The law, once made of stone, now seemed full of cracks. They walked slowly out of the square, into streets that were still and watching. A trader who had once laughed at the girl now said nothing as they passed. A guard who once raised a weapon now lowered his eyes. A child hiding behind a market stall whispered, "That's the girl who changed everything." By the time they reached the shelter, the air felt different. softer. The girl sat by the door, watching raindrops slip down the edge of the roof. The human rested inside, his body tired, but his spirit quiet. He looked at her and asked, "Do you want to leave this place?" She shook her head slowly. "No, not anymore." "Why?" he asked. "Because they saw me," she whispered. "Not just you, but them too. They saw me." He nodded. "Then we'll stay for a while." That evening, something strange happened. A knock came at the door. The girl jumped to her feet, tense at first, but when the door opened, it was not a soldier or an angry face. It was a small alien boy, no older than she had been when she first begged in the streets. In his hands was a small cloth pouch of food. He held it out without speaking. His eyes flicked to the human, then to the girl. She stepped forward slowly and took the pouch. Her hands were steady. "Thank you," she said. Her voice surprised the boy. He nodded and ran off. More knocks came in the following days. One woman offered soft blankets. A farmer brought dried vegetables. Even an old merchant who once mocked her dropped a sack of flour at the door saying, "No child should starve, not anymore." The girl watched each gift come, not with greed, but with quiet amazement. Each one was small, each one was simple, but each one said the same thing: "You are no longer alone." She began helping others too, cleaning up the alley near the shelter, bringing water to another child who was hungry, sitting beside an older beggar who had no voice left to ask. People started to follow. Not many, not fast, but enough. The settlement began to change, not by war, not by force, but by a human's heart and a girl's courage. One evening, as the stars peeked through the dark clouds, the girl sat beside the human, resting her head on his arm. "Do you still think I'm family?" she asked softly. He looked down at her, his eyes tired but warm. "I don't think it," he said. "I know it." She smiled, small but real. "I used to be hungry," she whispered, "and alone." "And now?" he asked. She leaned against him, listening to the quiet night. "Now I'm full," she said, "and I belong." And in the stillness, under a sky that had once forgotten her, the stars finally seemed to shine for her too.